All right. I've just lost the bit off the end of the microphone. I should just put that back on. Welcome, everybody. It's Cabinet this evening, and it's the 18th of November. We seem to be heading rapidly towards the latter part of the year. We have got a very busy agenda for you this evening. So welcome to those who are joining us at home, and welcome to those who are in the room with us tonight. So have I got any apologies for this evening?
Thank you, Chair. We have no apologies.
Thank you. So let's then move on. Does anybody have any interests that they need to declare at this part of the evening? Councillor Wakeford? You have microphone fun tonight. Keep going.
There we go. Sixth time lucky. With respect to item 8, sustainable play framework, I mean, I dare say it's superfluous, and we might all say versions of this, but I'm a councillor in Huntingdon, which has play areas in it, but propose to engage in debate. It's normal.
Thank you, Councillor Wakeford. I will just check with our monitoring officer. I'm taking it that's okay. There may be others that will now need to declare.
Thank you. I'm content with that, and that is noted.
On that basis, I've suddenly got an extra couple of hands. Councillor Kerr.
Thank you. I'm a councillor in St Ives.
And Councillor Harvey.
Thank you. Like Sam, I'm also a councillor in Huntingdon. So that, yeah.
Thank you. And Councillor Sanderson.
Members may not be aware, but I'm also a councillor in Huntingdon.
Thank you. We haven't got any other councillors in Huntingdon in the room, I don't believe. So I hopefully that's all of the interest relating to that item. But if there is anything as we go through the evening, please just stop me and make sure that we've made a suitable declaration. In which case then, can we move on to the substantive parts of tonight's agenda? Oh, yes, sorry, I'm rushing through. I'd forgotten item 1, which was the minutes of our last meeting, which doesn't actually feel that long ago, 14th of October and 21st of October. So you've had 2 sets of minutes. Is there anything anybody wishes to raise at this point? No? Is everybody happy that I sign those as a true record of the meeting? Can I have a show of hands just for... That's unanimous. Thank you. Just pause for a moment while I just put my... Thank you. In which case then, item 3, which is the Environmental Sustainable Design and Construction Technical Advice Note, which is a mouthful, but it's a really brilliant document. I'm going to hand across to Councillor Sanderson as the Executive Councillor, because it's his portfolio.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good evening, everyone. As you said, Chair, a bit of a mouthful there, so I'll just refer to this as TAN. The technical advice note, much simpler. So really this is a guidance, really is structured into key themes that developers and applicants must consider when they're applying for planning permission. And just before I start my remarks, I'd like to thank Matt Paul and Alison Wood from our officer team for all their hard work on preparing this report, and also Councillor Davenport Ray, who I know played a key role in the early stages of this and shaping it as a portfolio holder for the environment and climate change. So key themes really are planning and business regulations, national requirements, local plan policy, passive design such as layout, orientation, ventilation, building insulation and air tightness, mechanical ventilation and heat recovery. I won't go through all of them, but things like heat pumps, construction materials, MMC, modern methods of construction. So they're all contained in this document, and it's a very useful guide for developers when they're going through the process. So obviously this is important, helps to deliver the Council's climate change strategy, our commitment to net zero by 2040. Policy compliance provides clarity on how local plan policies, LP10 in particular, LP12 design implementation, how they fit in. Also efficiency gives developers clear expectations at pre-application and validation stage. So it reduces reworking and it speeds up decision making, and also fits in with our corporate plan priorities, and that directly supports creating a better Huntingdonshire for future generations by tackling climate change. Most recently, additional changes were made to the guidance as a result of comments from colleagues at scrutiny, particularly on battery storage, to reflect comments raised at briefings as well, and in relation to power failures and how they affect disabled users. So Cabinet's being asked to adopt the TAN Appendix 1 as council guidance to support the local plan to 2036, delegate to the Assistant Director of Place in consultation with the portfolio holder to make minor editorial amendments. And I'll happily take any questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. Are there any questions or comments from Cabinet? Go on, Councillor Davenport-Ray, start us off.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to take us back in time about 3.5 years to when us around the table here realized we had been elected and we wanted to try to form something together politically. And we created together a document called the Joint Administration Agreement. And to me, this document represents some of the best parts we were able to come together and agree on. So in our Joint Administration Agreement, it says Huntingdonshire must proactively tackle the climate crisis and ecological emergency. And then 4 different ways that we sought to do that. Some of them were specifically about planning. And so to me, this is really one of our our campaign promises, our policy documents that we were aiming for during our administration. So I'm really proud to see it here. And when we think about climate change, our council is committed to do things to combat climate change, but also to enable and influence the people around us. And that's really what the place of this document is. So for example, in the purpose section of the document, it talks about using this document alongside our adopted planning policies so that developers can take responsibility for delivering climate-conscious, future-proof development. Together, we can create sustainable places for the people of Huntingdonshire now and future generations to come. So this is a topic that I think all of us probably get asked when we go out and speak to residents. They see new houses going up and they want to know what we can do to influence the design. And this is it. And it's about influence rather than a policy like our local plan. But I'm really proud to see it here. And it does provide some challenge and some stretch to developers who are developing in Huntingdonshire. One example I would share is the biodiversity net gain section, where we say a minimum of 10% net gain must be achieved, calculating the government's biodiversity metric, but developers are encouraged to further enrich biodiversity and exceed the 10% legal minimum. So just getting those little phrases scattered throughout the document really shows our intention, and I have hope that it will improve the sustainability of the design that we see coming through our planning department in years to come. So I'm really happy that this has happened during our administration.
Thank you, Councillor Davenport-Ray. Does anybody else want to speak on this item? In which case, and I'm going to take a liberty from the chair, I'm going to echo the same things that Councillor Davenport-Ray has. And I know that the number of conversations I've had with our colleagues, our professional colleagues over the years, I know what a big ask this piece of work was on top of all of the other things that we were doing. And because we're an ambitious administration and we were quite tenacious, I suspect that we've pushed for something to come through in a timescale which really has probably stretched out our professional colleagues, but they have done us absolutely proud. I do know that our developers genuinely do read our documents. We've seen that time and again with the place strategy. We've seen it time and again with the local plan. We've seen it time and again every time we create a document that talks about our ambition and what matters in Huntingdonshire. This is a really good document to try and encourage more of what we would like. And I suspect, knowing some of our developers and some of who might actually be watching tonight, I know that some of them actually, as soon as you throw down the gauntlet and say, well, we'd quite like something like this, some will go the extra mile and say, well, we can't just do that. We might do something even more than that. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the developments that come on stream where developers have genuinely engaged with this ambition and reflect that in what they bring forward. In which case, then tonight before us is to page 15. So it's to adopt the TAN. I'm glad we've got a shortened abbreviation because it's a long mouthful for a really, really important document. But to adopt the TAN and to delegate that authority to the head of planning, infrastructure and public protection in consultation with the Executive Councillor for Planning to make any necessary typographical, visual or other minor changes to the document prior to publication. Can I have a proposer? Councillor Sanderson. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Davenport-Reid. Can I have a show of all those in favour? And that is unanimous. Thank you very much. That feels like a really good thing to be doing as we go into this time of the year. So thank you very much to all those officers who've worked on it, and very much looking forward to seeing that in implementation. In which case, then, we move on to the next substantive item then for this evening, which is about our council tax support scheme for 2026-27, another key piece of work and a commitment I know that we've been very keen to work on. So I think this is Councillor Ferguson, and I do know that you have officer support should you wish it. Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Chair. So the report in front of you provides an update on the operation of our council tax support scheme following the significant redesign of the scheme which we introduced in April 2024. As Cabinet will recall, the intention behind those changes was to simplify the scheme and to ensure that more support reaches low-income households who need it most. The report is full of evidence which shows that the scheme is performing as intended. We now support around 6% of households across the district with council tax support, with almost 4,000 residents receiving up to 100% reduction in their council tax liability. This means that more people are being kept out of a crisis at a time when the cost of living continues to place a real pressure on households. Importantly, the redesigned scheme has also made the process easier and quicker. People who claim universal credit no longer have to make separate claim for council tax support, and increased automation has enabled the team to manage a higher caseload while improving processing times, which is really important for the people claiming this benefit, all using existing resources. Importantly, I think this is really important, we've seen fewer reminders and court summons being issued alongside the highest council tax collection rate in 5 years. So that really is a win-win. I think, the pernicious having to chase people to pay their council tax liability that people can't afford genuinely is one of the fact that we have to do that much less with this scheme is a real benefit. There are, of course, risks, which we were aware of at the time we implemented this. The increased number of households receiving council tax support does reduce our council tax base slightly. However, we forecast this as part of the scheme design, and it's being closely monitored within and the current projections are within the expected levels that we projected, which is also credit to officers for doing kind of proper simulation and due diligence work up front. We also saw a rise, and I've just lost my notes, in the number of amended bills, but that's again within projections. So in general, I think this has been we're having two full years of that scheme almost now. It's been a win-win from all points of view, and I think that I'm happy in recommending that we carry it forward unchanged for a further year. I think that the overview and scrutiny panel were highly supportive of the scheme. I think it's one of the great successes of this council, and I think most of the credit, all the credit, goes down to the officers who put this in place, designed it really well, did proper due diligence up front, made us aware of the risks, and have delivered it. And not only saving people in the community money in their council tax liability, but also making us more efficient and able to serve them better. So something I'm very proud of, and happy to recommend that we take it forward for another year.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson, and I think quite rightly proud. Comments and from Councillor Sanderson first, and then Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is a really good paper. I'm just wondering the reason for the increase in those numbers. I think you may have alluded to it. Councillor Ferguson may have alluded to earlier, but obviously a substantial increase from March 24 to sort of August. Is it just simply that more people are coming forward that didn't know that they actually were entitled to help, which is often the case, isn't it? And just to complement, I think reducing the number of days that people have to wait from 8.78 to an average of 2.86 in 2 years is remarkable. So well done to the team.
So I think part of that's down to the fact that it's now tied to universal credit, so there's an automatic trigger, and people who there would have been people previously who would have been entitled to it and didn't know, but now it's triggered by universal credit, and so those people get the benefit automatically, which I think accounts for most of the increase in numbers.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey, then Councillor Wakeford. Sorry, my mind went blank, Sam, sorry.
Thank you. I support residents in Huntingdon with their mental health, and one of the first things they talk about is money issues. And I've noticed a huge difference in those residents when it comes to getting this council tax support scheme. It takes so much pressure off them, and it's just incredible to see the difference it makes actually in their mental health. So I'm really in support of this scheme as well.
Thank you, and it's really nice to hear those first-hand accounts. Councillor Wakeford.
Almost like it's trying to tell me something, which may be why the chair gave me this at Development Management Committee last night as well. We've got a long agenda. I don't want to repeat what others have said, and I dare say we could all speak positively on multiple items, including the previous one we had on our agenda. But I do think the council tax support scheme is one of the things I'm most pleased about us having. Thank you, Councillor Davenport-Ray. I think the council tax support scheme is one of the things I'm certainly proudest about us having brought in as an administration. I think it's a reflection of our collective values from different political places. I was pleased we were able to come together on it as a principle, supporting those regardless of age, including in working age, who are least able to pay for their council tax with the maximum legally possible support is absolutely the right thing. It wasn't what this council did previously, but the fact that there was broad support, as again through scrutiny and discussion now and last year, across the political spectrum, even beyond our broad joint administration, I think reflects positively on how we now operate as a council.
Thank you, Councillor Wakeford. Anybody else want to come back in? Councillor Ferguson?
Just talking on the fact that we're so proud of this, unfortunately, as we look, well, maybe not unfortunately, as we look towards local government reorganisation, you have to note that some of our potential partners have much more punitive council tax or less generous council tax support schemes, which I guess places this at risk, perhaps in whatever new local authority might emerge, but also on the benefit. On the other side, maybe we might be able to convince those partners of the benefits of this scheme, because although I think the calculation said it cost all the councils in Huntingdonshire, so mainly the county council, about £1 million in lost revenue. Of course, much of that revenue was never going to be collected anyway, because it's chasing people who can't afford to pay through court summons, through bailiffs, and through those kind of unpleasant means. And so I think the costs have never been. It's difficult to work out the complete costs as well, because you can't see the other side of that coin and see what benefits and the costs we avoid. We're not having to support those people, but I think there is a genuine benefit to society, and hopefully as we move forward to LGR, if we find ourselves paired with councils who don't have 100% council tax support schemes, hopefully we can convince them that it's the right thing to do.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. And we're going to be looking at the transformation project later. I think this is one of those ones that it doesn't only show, how we've transformed things like the process. So the process works efficiently, it works quicker, we can make better use of the functions that we have, so by linking it with universal credit. But there is also, if we look at how we spend the public's money, the punitive measures, I think all of us would much rather that we actually helped people who really, really needed that help, rather than spending the money on taking them to court. And actually, that's one of the things that maybe we will want to look at as an officer cohort, to think about as part of our impact. When we report back on impact, I think this might be a really good one to look at. I think it probably will influence those people that are around us, whether we're partnered with them or not, because I think this is a really good example of when a change in policy not only brings better outcomes for people, but actually potentially is a better use of the limited resources that we have, because then we can actually regenerate that money into other frontline services to help people who could be in crisis and are potentially our most vulnerable residents. So I think maybe there's a really good bit of case a case study there that we might be able to genuinely do something with. Unless there are any other comments, we've been asked to note the contents of the report and to endorse the recommendation that the scheme principles for 2026-27 remain unchanged, ensuring that the scheme continues to deliver support to low-income households across the district in line with the corporate priorities to improve the quality of life for local people and to deliver good quality, high value for money services. So it is a to note, but I suspect that if I was to ask you to vote for it, I suspect there would be unanimous support given the grins around the table. But another really nice report. Councillor Ferguson, did you want to come back
I think
in?
this goes forward to full council now, doesn't it? So people will have a chance to vote on it if they're anxious to later on.
Thank you very much. Right. Then that moves us on then to the next report of this evening. Thank you very much, Councillor Ferguson, and a thank you to all the officers, because as I say, when these reports come through at the end of a process, we often don't spend a long time talking about it, but it's taken months and months of hard work and dedication to get it to this point. So let's move on then and look at the Treasury Management 6-month performance review for 2025-26. And Councillor Mickleborough, I think this is you.
Certainly is. We were going to play a little bit of a game of tag team. So I'll run the report. Or read through the report, and if there are any difficult questions, I will call on the subject matter experts to help me out if I can't answer them. And what's also interesting with the Treasury Management side of things is that it plays into the financial performance report as well, because it sets the scene quite nicely. So key items to look at. Bank of England base rate decreased from 4.5% in April through 4.25% in May to 4% in August. That is higher than we had budgeted. Gilt rates for 10-year government bonds fluctuated between 4.4% and 4.8% in the first 6 months and then settled at about 4.7% by the end of September. Gilt rates are a better indication of the rates we achieve when we invest in the debt management office than the bank base rates, because those have been slightly higher. It's actually worked out in our favour. And one of the items in the finance performance report is that we have done far better with our interest than we were expecting. Interest rates are forecast to fall over the next couple of years. But that will only happen if inflation falls. But inflation has actually proven fairly sticky during the municipal year. It's averaged out at about 3.7%, which notably is above the rate that HDC are allowed to increase council tax by, which this year was 3.11%. And what actually it means as we think of our forward budget is that our real spending power is actually being decreased slightly through no fault of anyone's, just over the impact of inflation on the general economic position. So inflation and interest rates are both relatively high compared to the recent past, and this feeds into thinking about the Treasury management strategy of using lower risk investments, which at the moment are providing higher than expected interest rates, and that risk with the interest rate side of things means that it is possible that there are or could be an increase in debt defaults, which could lead to increased stress on the economy. However, this is why it's important that we take good advice, and Treasury management and everything that we do from the council's point of view is done with a view on the advice that we get from Link Group. So HDC Treasury response to the market has been that surplus funds are primarily invested on a short-term basis, mostly in the Government Debt Management Office, or DMO, in money market funds, and in our standard transactional bank. And where it has been possible to take a higher return without sacrificing liquidity, that opportunity has been taken. However, because of rates and gilt rates being where they were, or where they have been, money market funds haven't been exceeding DMO rates, and therefore we haven't tended to take that opportunity. The less good news is that the commercial property portfolio is only forecast to generate £2.5 million of net income for the council during this financial year, which is lower than we would hope, but isn't a surprise considering the commercial property market as things stand at the moment. That's me. Any questions?
Are there any questions? Councillor Davenport-Ray.
I'm going to ask the question I usually ask twice a year. Can you tell us more about how we're feeling about ESG funds, whether we're remaining cautious as we have in previous periods? I notice we have one money market fund that we're invested in so far this year. What's happening on that front?
So the DMO is, it's a little bit difficult to put as a ethical fund, but in essence, the DMO allows us to lend to fellow councils and to the government in a way that reduces costs to taxpayers and citizens of the entire country, because they don't have to go to the money markets in order to plug short-term gaps that they have. So we've tended to stick with the DMO for partly that reason, and partly because of the risk reason, and then also partly because the rates of return are strong at the moment. The previous review of those money market funds, if I take Oliver's words from last time round, were that we'd looked and were concerned by the content of some of them. The one that he has been investing in ticked the boxes that we were looking for, but to take words from his mouth, he might want to correct me if I'm wrong, but it's been a case that because of the situation with the DMO, there hasn't really been the motivation to go looking at those other funds, because the DMO is giving what we consider to be a good return with an ethical slant on it, without needing to look at those other money market options.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? In which case then, I was going to say, and I can't see Oliver indicating that he needs to come and correct Councillor Mickleborough, so I think you passed. But thank you very much. So that's to note, but obviously it does then lead into the next item. So we will note that. Thank you very much to Oliver and the team, because again, you know, a short conversation here, but a significant amount of work to make our treasury management really successful. And long may we continue to have times when it is performing better than we'd hoped, because hopefully that balances out the times when there are things that are beyond our immediate control. So that's really encouraging. Thank you. Let's move on then to item 6, which is the 2025-26 Finance Performance Report, forecast at Q2. So Councillor Mickleborough, this is you again.
So some numbers to start with. The current net revenue budget for 25-26 is £26.772 million. The forecast net expenditure for the year ahead is £27.591 million, less contributions reserves of £1.745 million, which gives us a forecast underspend of almost £1 million, £926,000, which is a positive. It means we are spending less. Now, the point in there which people have looked at is less contributions from reserves of 1.745 million. The reason for that isn't because we are plugging a gap. This is because last year we put money into reserves in order to specifically spend it, but because of the nature of how you report on a year's worth of expenditure from a revenue point of view, you sort of have to save it up, put it somewhere, and then this year you say, well, I'll take that out and I'll spend it this year. I've drawn down from my reserves. That is an expected thing. It's not I'm drawing from my savings to plug a spending gap. So the other thing to mention to this is that the way that we report the current net revenue budget, when people look at £26 million, actually our overall revenue over the course of the year, then the amount of expenditure we make is around the £85 million mark. What we get is that piece of how the report needs to be made, which ignores, to a certain extent, elements of income that we get from elsewhere and expenditure that sort of cancels itself out. As you look at the revenue report, I've described it as having more ups and downs than a roller coaster. So we have the forecast underspend of £926,000. Most of that is due to planning performance. So there's been an amount of money that has come in that has given us that underspend. The complexity of this is that it isn't an even amount of money. So it has arrived in this year, but won't necessarily all be able to be allocated in this year. But because of the way we're reporting on it, because we know it's arrived, we've got to report on it at this point in time, which means that the Q3 and Q4 reports might look very different. However, we've got to book it at the point that it arrives. What we've also seen has been a credit income from waste of £600,000, which was unexpected. We've had the previously mentioned increase in investment from the Treasury management side of things. And we've also had an accounting adjustment with minimum revenue provision. So what we've seen there are items that give us a big positive. What we have seen, again, I talked about a roller coaster, going the other way has been a reduction in rental from property due to vacant properties of £700,000. And we've also incurred costs of £400,000 in the LGR process. A big one in here, and again, we may find ourselves getting to the end of the financial year and suddenly out of nowhere people will say, well, there's a big change, why has that happened? We are currently incurring costs for the One Leisure refurbishment in the planning stage. Now, generally you would expect that to be capitalised, but you can't capitalise it until you've actually started a project. And because we're at the stage of working out if we have a project or not, all of those costs are arriving in the revenue budget. So what we might find is that we get to the end of this financial year, and because we've been able to capitalise, suddenly we have a very big underspend. Equally, we might find we get to the end of this budget year and we haven't been able to, and we've got an overspend. Such is the vagaries, unfortunately, of finance. However, it's simplistic but accurate to say we are in a good situation. Things are very well managed. The team are on top of everything. The planning is going heavily into the budget for next year, with all the vagaries and the uncertainties that surround us. So I would like to commend the team on the job that they're doing on the revenue side. The capital budget is as ever, very predictable because it takes a long time to spend these monies. It's predictable in the sense that we will be underspent again at the end of the year, simply just because of timing variations. And it is expected that everything that isn't spent this year will be rolled forward and rephased into next year.
Thank you. Comments and questions, colleagues? Councillor Davenport-Ray?
The Cambridgeshire Local Government Pension Fund is undergoing a valuation process at the moment. If we look back a few years to the most recent valuation, it was overfunded. Once we have the results of the current valuation, how will that affect our council's finances? What should we expect to see? Where will we see it?
So I'm not a fan of speculating on the financial side of things. I do recall 18 months ago we looked at it and we said, would we want to make any changes? And the answer is, based on financial risk and prudence and the situation we're in financially, it would be better to maintain the current contributions to the pension fund. I think that there are three very obvious options that arrive at the point that we have that information. I wouldn't want to speculate on them, though, but I think it would be a topic for conversation as that data arrives.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Mickleborough, I'm going to ask you a question then. So compared to previous years, every so often we get the challenge for, should we charge what we charge for council tax, given, are we awash with money when we shouldn't be, or are we sort of heavily in debt? From a very simplistic point of view, that's often the challenge that we get when we talk to people who don't spend their lives watching these balance sheets. Given where we are at this point, how on track are we compared to previous years? How's it looking? I think I heard you say it was looking pretty good, but I think in very simple terms, for people who are watching and thinking, I still don't understand, what's the headlines at this point?
So I would say we're boringly on track. There are, if you look at the budget in that context of £83 million, and you say, well, we've got £900,000 that's arrived here, that's 1% of budget. But what we end up with, as you look through it, there are variations that take it up and down and up and down and up and down that are between 6 and 7% of budget. If all of those had gone against us, we'd be looking at a £3.5 million bill and going, oh, that's going to hurt. We could find ourselves at the end of the year looking at it and going, oh, we're £1.5 million up. But that's a better position to be in. But what you've got to do is it's like the football analogy of sometimes you kick the ball as far away as you can just to get it safe to safety, and other times you take a gamble on things. And I don't think any resident would appreciate a council taking a gamble on taxpayers' money. So we've always been prudent. We've always looked to have a defensive position, and then if the money arrives, and if we get to the end of the year and we're in a position to do something like the wealth building fund and supporting our communities, then we take that bonus at that point in time and we do something good with it. Actually, inflation is running ahead of what we could increase council tax by. So the challenge actually for the team is going to be at the end of the year, they will have less money if they do nothing extra, simply because inflation has exceeded what we've been able to increase council tax by. And that's just the nature of challenges, and everyone faces it. Households are facing it, businesses are facing it. And again, that's why a council running their finances prudently, making sure that they aren't gambling, taking sensible decisions, and then implementing once they're in a position that they can do so, it is a model that I think we're excelling at. And I would like to think that long may it continue, whoever forms the administration that runs next year's budget.
Thank you for making a really complex thing really understandable. Thank you. Councillor Wakeford.
Thank you. We're obviously still fairly early in the year, and as Councillor Mickleborough's described, our prudent approach does involve being careful and cautious as to headwinds that can hit us, and uncertainties, some of which he's flagged. But I think it is already visible that elements of the positive picture are a function of a good work and careful budget management and so on by our officers, and we're enormously grateful for that. I'm not going to run through, not least as he has done more expertly than myself, but I think in particular the best part of a £1 million recorded as an underspend from 800,000 in from planning performance agreements that he flagged is records as an underspend, but is income brought in for specific work that we are doing collaboratively with developers and investors into Huntingdonshire. Councillor Sanderson is more expert in this than me, but that's the reason why the money can flow between years more easily than it otherwise might as work's ongoing. But I think that sort of illustrates the sort of partnership influencing approach, as we've discussed on other items as well, that we've put at the forefront of how we operate rather than purely facing internally. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wakeford. And again, another nod potentially back to then the conversations we're having about transformation and commercialisation and looking and thinking about how we operate council processes into the future, when we do really genuinely have to challenge ourselves to work really well with the resources that we have at our disposal. Unless there are any other questions, then we've already done our function in the sense we were invited to consider and comment on the revenue financial performance for 25-26 Q2. And we were invited to consider and comment on the capital financial performance for 25-26. We've done that. Thank you very much to officers for your dedication and making sure that not only do we have really good financial reporting and really understand that, but to all the officers who contribute every day, day in, day out, right the way through the organisation. So every member of staff, because that roller coaster that you described, Councillor Mickleborough, is actual real people doing their jobs diligently and working really hard to try and make sure that the resources that we do have are deployed as best that we can possibly do them. So a thank you to all of those people. In which case then, thank you very much. I'm going to move us on to item 7, which is the corporate performance report for 2025-26, also for Q2. So this is for Councillor Ferguson, I believe.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Chair. So there's as usual, lots of good news in this report. KPI 2 is a key one. Number of One Leisure admissions has increased greatly, partly as a result of the upgrades to Huntingdon One Leisure, which goes to show when you invest in our portfolio, you get good results. Delighted that after some scepticism, so I've often complained about disabled facilities grant, and Councillor Harvey has often complained about me. During my time as portfolio holder, we hadn't really managed to improve it, but across the last couple of months, we've had a significant improvement. I was sceptical that would be continued last month, but it has this month. And so the average waiting time for disability facilities DFGs has reduced to 22.1 weeks, which is the best we've had since April 2023. So that upward trend is continuing. KPI 10 is council tax banding. We did have some problems with the Valuation Office change their systems, which was preventing us from offering or be able to issue council tax on new properties. That has been resolved. I just moved into a new property, so I was disappointed to get my council tax bill so quickly. I thought I was going to get a couple of months leeway, but no, the team has already hit me with that, so I'll be paying my council tax this month. KPI 17, businesses engaged with. I think credit to our CEO for her CEO breakfast scheme has been one of the factors in meaning that we've engaged with the record number of businesses, which is really fantastic. I think one of the comments from ONS is that we don't celebrate the downstream work that this team does enough. It's always difficult with these kind of engagement things, is that we do the upfront lead generation stuff, but it's difficult to see how those opportunities develop. But I think Councillor Martin talked about, the RAF Witten thing and the role that we've played in that. And so our economic development team do a fantastic job, but this is a good indication of how we do that at the start of the process. We're going to talk about corporate transformation soon. KPI 22 is missed bins, and now that's always been a really good measure for us until last year, when I think the team set too ambitious targets and then failed to meet them, which is, I think, there's going to be a common theme with corporate transformation, is that we're working hard to do these things and sometimes we overstretch ourselves. Good news is we're back on track with that. We have a missed bin rate of 0.054%, and that's back to green, which is congratulations to that team. And I think there's lots of other good stuff going on. I think in terms of comments from ONS, Councillor Martin, and again, it's a concern, PI 11 is the number of affordable houses is still in red. I mentioned that although we're not necessarily going to make our target of delivering the number of affordable houses this year across the whole of this administration, I think we've delivered a record number of affordable houses. And even if some of these affordable houses slip into Q1, they're still being built. It's not like they're not going to get built. But I think there was some rightful concern from ONS because, as I said previously, some of the downstream measures on temporary accommodation, homelessness, are affected by this directly. And I think ONS has requested that Councillor Wakeford come and talk to them, which I'm glad you'll be surprised. I'm sure that you'll be glad to do, Councillor Wakeford. And I think, there's also PI23, which is about kind of street scene. Last month, there's the inspections has shown that 100% of the inspector scenes were free of litter and graffiti. And despite the excellent work that we do, most of us, in our own communities know that 100% is a high number. So I was relieved that number was down to 95% this week. That's not a con, but the team of Councillor Garland and ONS have requested, I think they've been providing information on how we do those assessments to make sure they're robust, because despite the excellent job we do, I think we can all point to areas of graffiti and litter in our own towns and villages. So I think that's everything from me.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Would anybody like to come in and comment? Councillor Wakeford and then Councillor Harvey.
Thank you. I might pick up PI 11. Councillor Ferguson described discussion at scrutiny about our affordable housing numbers. I was not in the public gallery. When I have been, I've often, when my portfolio areas have come up in his reports, been on hand to come in and address questions off the cuff where the panel wishes that. Had I done so, in response to what is minuted as a question from Councillor Martin as to how this is going to be addressed, is to remind them by doing exactly the sort of things that we brought to them that they told us it wasn't worth bothering with, to proactively work harder and more innovatively to deliver affordable housing, which I'm extremely pleased as a Cabinet we took careful consideration of scrutiny questions and challenges earlier in the summer, but we took a difficult but I think valid decision to proceed anyway, because I warned exactly that this sort of thing was likely. Councillor Ferguson is quite right that even if we had delivered no affordable houses this year, we would still have delivered more affordable houses in our 4-year term than any 4-year period in HDC previously in the years that we've got data for. But delivering more than has been delivered in the past is not the metric that I think any of us care about. We are interested in addressing the need and going further and faster. So I remain, as I've always said to the scrutiny panel, who I've visited quite frequently in our period as administration with various elements of my portfolio, I'm always happy to speak to them where they wish, but this one does have quite a simple answer, and we've already given it to them in advance because we work hard to see this sort of thing coming. But of course, there's variability in the housing market, and as Stephen said, no houses are lost. It's just a question of which years they fall in, and so there is, of course, that measure of uncertainty and chance as well, which is a factor in positive numbers as well as negative numbers.
Thank you, Councillor
I hope
Wakeford.
that's helpful to colleagues, and as I say, I will, scrutiny members may be listening, but certainly happy to relay that to them as well.
And I think the challenge is that we constantly have to innovate. We have to continually look and review and challenge ourselves, and some of that is sometimes uncomfortable because it's doing something which is new. But if we don't do that, we won't continue to stay in the place that we really, really want to. And I know that sometimes actually that means that we have growth in places that people sort of get nervous about. But actually, if we don't have growth, we can't deliver our affordable housing as well as the other housing that is much needed. So it's a challenge for all of us, but very much looking forward to seeing that the results of that coming through. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to put on record my thanks for the team that has been looking at disabled facilities grants, because that has been quite the challenge to bring that down, I think, and it's been a huge improvement, and huge thanks for their hard work.
Yeah, and I'd like to say thank you to you, Councillor Harvey, for giving me insight to actually the real effect it has on residents. I've been to see some of your residents about this. I know Councillor Sanderson also has problems, and I'm sure we all have. And having that real insight into the pain that causes people, and your constant motivation to solve this. Before you were on Cabinet, you would have sat on that working group. So I really appreciate your input as well, because it's a really important one. So thank you.
If I may, Councillor Ferguson, I think one of the challenges we often get from the opposition, but it comes sometimes from our own benches too, is that, you know, are we, when we achieve these KPIs, are we making life too easy for ourselves? And I think sometimes we have a bit of a challenge because we constantly strive to improve, and we, you know, and one of them, it's 100%. We, you know, you can't get more than that. So what's your reflection around, if you like, what's the sweet spot? Because there has to come a point where actually the performance is absolutely optimal, and sometimes going for even higher performance actually becomes suboptimal because it's not a good use of the resource that you have. And I just wondered, because I think that's one of the challenges we're going to have. We are doing so well on KPIs, and we've really embedded that in the organisation in a way that it wasn't previously. I just wondered about your observations on that, because I suspect we will get the usual pushback, and I think this is about, for a new administration, you know, what's our reflection?
So there's something called the Pareto principle, where you get kind of 80% of the benefit from doing 20% of the work. And as you chase 85, 90%, it gets harder and harder, and you end up being diminishing returns. In terms of the targets we set, I think we can successfully say, especially after this year, that we no longer have ownership of those. We suggest targets. We went through about 3 iterations with ONS. We went to them really early. They challenged us on some of them, and almost disappointingly to me, the team went away and accepted every single one of the challenges that ONS made, and we made the targets more difficult. Some of that is being led by the service areas. So I think Andy Rogan and his team, you know, sometimes you do. You want to push. You realise that you have challenges in year with staffing problems, staff retention, but we don't ever try and, you know, make excuses. And I think the point of this is sometimes if we have a report that's all green, then people don't believe it. And so I think it's a sign of an organisation which is challenging itself, is changing, and we'll talk about that again with transformation report in a moment. But I think it's a good sign that sometimes we set ambitious targets and sometimes we miss them, and it's always a question of resource allocations and trying to chase record performance isn't 100% for everything. I mean, I've often said on kind of customer service call times that our response times are good enough. And I don't, you know, getting better doesn't necessarily, they're better than almost any other call center you end up phoning up, ring up the airline or the bank, or God forbid, HMRC, yeah, and you'll be on the phone all day. Whereas, you know, we have very, very low code, and we track them and we work really hard to beat them and improve them. So I think it's a sign of an organisation that is transforming itself organically and is working hard to do the best for residents. Sometimes we fall short, but not often, I think, is the truth.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Are there any other comments? In which case, we've invited and we've considered. Again, thanks to all of the staff who are represented in these reports, and particularly the Disabled Facilities Grants. You know, what's really nice is we're coming towards the end of a 4-year period, is some of the things that we really, really wanted to achieve, we are seeing those come to fruition, because some of those are genuinely quite difficult to deliver. So that's really, really encouraging. Thank you very much for everybody's hard work. I'm going to move us then on to item 8, which is the Sustainable Framework for Play in Huntingdonshire. And I know that Councillor Wakeford, you need to depart at this point.
I do. My apologies, and it's nothing personal to Cabinet colleagues. Up next.
So we'll just record that for the minutes so that we are still quorate, so we're able to continue. So we're going to move on then to a report from, this is from Councillor Kerr, and this is all about sustainable play in Huntingdonshire.
Thank you, Chair. Before I give the outline of the report, I just want to thank Kirsten for the incredibly comprehensive report she wrote in her presentation at Overview and Scrutiny. It was brilliant. It was well done. So the report sets out a strategic framework for outdoor play in Huntingdonshire, ensuring provision is inclusive, sustainable, and aligned with our council's priorities. The council currently owns and manages 47 play areas across the district, and the framework takes a district-wide view of play provision to ensure it meets the needs of the community. It proposes a tiered model of play provision, focusing investment on high-impact areas, enhancing flagship sites, and reviewing all assets for long-term value. The framework is based on extensive consultation and national best practice. It addresses gaps in access, quality, and inclusivity across the district. It also includes a £730,000 phased investment over 4 years, built into the medium-term financial strategy to ensure financial resilience. This framework promotes inclusive design, climate resilience, and community co-design, ensuring play spaces reflect local needs and aspirations. It supports our corporate plan and play strategy, helping improve health, well-being, and pride of place across our communities, and strengthens our ability to secure external funding and developer contributions by showing a clear strategic approach to play. This is a chance for Huntingdonshire to become a national exemplar in delivering sustainable, inclusive, and impactful play provision. The Overview and Scrutiny Panel are very supportive of the report, and I'm encouraging the Cabinet to recognise its potential to transform play provision and deliver lasting benefits for our residents. So there are 4 recommendations, actually there's 5 recommendations to adopt the Sustainable Play Framework, to approve the tiered play provision model, and to commit and securing the multi-funding of the medium-term strategy, locking in the £730,000. And there's 2 aspects of delegated authority, and that is the head of leisure and the Executive Councillor for Parks, Countryside, Waste and Street Scene, to identify income-generating opportunities in the flagship sites, and also to look at developing community engagement. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. Any comments or questions? Councillor Sanderson?
Well, I like 4.3 where it says do everything. There's an option to do nothing, to do something, or do everything, and we've taken the do everything option, which is good. So I was really pleased to see this, because I don't think we've ever been in a position to carry this out before, and it's good that we've got to that stage now. So 12.4 I think is good, and sort of just takes you through each financial year. The areas we're looking at, £730,000 over that period is pretty substantial. And I assume that as and when the team gets to various sites, they'll, use their judgment and knowledge to sort of upgrade areas and see where things need to be added in. So I think good to sort of delegate this to them. But very nice document.
Thank you. Any other? Councillor Davenport-Ray.
You mentioned seeking out opportunities for income generation at the flagship sites. Can you give us any examples of what that might look like, or how the other councils have done that?
One of the things that Greg is actually looking at is doing an inflatable play area at Hinchingbrook Park, for instance, which we run during the school holidays. And in other areas, that's been extremely lucrative.
Thank you.
Pop-up coffee shop, maybe at Paxton Pits. There's because we bought a mobile one, so being able to have that travel around. He's got a lot of ideas.
I was going to say, I'm feeling a photo opportunity coming on when the inflatables arrive, but I'm not volunteering myself. Any other comments or questions? In which case, then, I am going to say from the chair, play is really, really important. It's not only important for health and well-being for our youngsters, but it's actually really important as part of sort of community engagement and feeling part of a place and being included. And it's important as well for the adults that go with their children and their young people, who also have an opportunity to make connections and talk to other people. So I don't think the impact can be underestimated. It isn't just, going down to a park and spending a bit of time. It's the whole package of what you get from being in that space. It really feels that for the first time we are able to genuinely plan ahead. It feels that it's either never had money or it's been incredibly piecemeal and ad hoc. I'm really pleased that we have a really good strategic plan. We're looking at how we're going to resource that, and that hopefully will mean that we can keep on top of that investment, because I think one of the challenges is playgrounds get tired very quickly, and it's really quite hard if you don't drip feed that investment on a regular basis. So I really welcome this. I think it is incredibly invaluable for all our communities. I have to confess, I didn't realise that we were responsible for quite so many play areas. I knew some of our flagship ones and I knew some of our community ones. But of course, quite often when developers deliver a play scheme as part of a development, sometimes that doesn't then have a home, and therefore it will come to us. And it really is important that those continue to flourish. So I think this is a really good report and something which is incredibly welcome. We've got a series of recommendations. I'm just going to scroll back up my report just so that we can just come back to those. Bear with me a second, because the link, that's it. So it's on page 288. So we are being recommended to adopt the framework as a strategic approach, to approve the tiered play provision model as set out in the report, and to commit to securing a multi-year funding through the medium-term financial strategy to lock in an indicative 730,000 of capital investment to enable the delivery of this framework. It also is a recommendation to delegate authority to the Head of Leisure, Health and Environment in consultation with the Executive Councillor for Parks and Countryside, Waste and Street Scene to identify and coordinate income-generating flagship sites. So very much look forward to seeing what we bring forward, and to delegate authority to the same people to develop the community engagement initiatives in terms of co-design. And again, that's really welcome, because that's our communities then owning their spaces, and their spaces reflecting some of the things that are important locally. Do I have a proposer for that? Councillor Kerr, I'm looking at you. Thank you. So Councillor Kerr will propose. Would somebody like to second it, please? Oh, I've got two people. We'll take Councillor Harvey this time, but thank you, Councillor Davenport-Ray, as well. Can I have a show of those in favour, please? And again, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. I say, really looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to seeing some of the images of those new and refurbished sites, sort of before and after, would be fantastic. And I say, I think there must be a photo opportunity with the inflatable play when it arrives. Councillor Kerr, I'm looking forward to seeing that. Thank you very much. In which case, then we move us on to the last item of this evening, which in fact would not have been as part of your original packet. It was an additional paper. This is our transformation framework. And Councillor Davenport-Ray, I think you're going to present this to us. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So this is transformation framework, and I'll emphasize the word framework, but I'll explain why a little bit later. First of all, why are we creating this document? It isn't something we've had before. If we think back to our peer review, one of their pieces of feedback is that we didn't clearly articulate how our council was transforming or intended to transform, or what plans we had in place for that. And so I think that was quite a fair observation, and this is the response to that. Not all councils do this work, but I think it's important for us to respond to that feedback from our peers. So, are we creating a new piece of work? Not really. And that's because this document acts as a summary and a touchstone to bring together and communicate how we're transforming our council. One of the, first I have to thank my colleague, Councillor Ferguson, for presenting this at scrutiny for me. I'm kicking myself that I didn't get to do it, actually, because I think they had a lot of really interesting feedback, a lot of valid, constructive criticism, some of which I think I'm definitely going to propose we take on board. But part of that was around terminology. So originally this was called the Transformation Plan, and one of their pieces of feedback was that we should change the title, and I think that's fair. When they saw on their agenda that they were going to receive a transformation plan, what they anticipated was that this would be a strategic document that kind of gave the vision of what the strategic change was going to be, and a separate document with all of its own actions and all these things we were going to try to do to the service areas. And that was never really the intention. So I think it was just the name that we didn't quite get spot on. So transformation framework. And it's made up of documents that we already use and we've already gone through the political processes with, our budget, our strategic plan, our our place strategy, lots of different things that have strategic elements in them already. They've been brought all together in this document. So, for example, our workforce strategy is something transformative that we've been doing. That's part of our transformation plan. Some of the work around One Leisure and things that we want to change at our leisure centers. The community health and wealth building project is pretty transformational and something that not very many of our peers are working on. And then earlier tonight, we talked about the council tax support scheme. So another thing that's transforming the way that our council operates. So these are things often that we were already doing or we planned to do, but we hadn't spoke about them. So to the ONS feedback, three pieces of feedback that they gave us. One was about the terminology, which we've edited. So the version that's in front of you that I'm proposing today is transformation framework. The second was that the scrutiny really did want to see a transformation plan. They were anticipating something that was directive to the service areas about, here's our grand vision for transformation, here's what we want you to do. I think that's an interesting piece of feedback, but I think it comes with risks. So I'm quite proud of how these transformational projects have come not from someone necessarily outside the organization, but often the service areas themselves are working out, we see something strategic that we can do here that's transformative. And I'd rather bring all those concepts together and highlight them rather than creating another piece of work. It's similar to the climate strategy. If you were to create another piece of work, it could also be easily ignored. If you have one team working on transformation rather than all the teams thinking about transformation and everything they do. So we're not going to create a transformation plan, but we have a transformation framework. Scrutiny also wanted to ensure that we were going to come back to them. We did intend to, but I don't think it was clear enough in the report, in the version that we provided to them. So we've made that much more clear that this is coming in November. It's in the middle of the year because it was sort of a challenge that we're responding to mid-year, but it is intended to be published every year. And so we'll go back to scrutiny in June with the 2026-27 transformation framework. I think I'll leave it at that.
I'm going to cheekily from the chair before I invite others to come in. I think the fact that it's a transformation framework speaks volumes about how we think as an administration and how our current cohort of officers think. I think typically councils have done a project on, and that's, you do a project on this and then you do a project on that, and that's how you benchmark your success. We have led the way in terms of how council thinking is evolving, and this is part of a national trend, but we are certainly at the front of that. We did it with climate. We talked about a green lens, that, you know, it should be woven through every bit of thinking that we do rather than being just a standalone project. Transformation is equally a cultural way of thinking, way of approaching things, and actually to embed it and get the real benefits from it, it's about welcoming the opportunity and encouraging our teams to genuinely think about how might we work, how might we innovate, how might we do things better, more efficiently, how might we work differently because the future is changing and the world in which we're working. And I think that's a really welcome culture. And I'm going to be slightly controversial. I think even our peers, when we did the peer review, may not have necessarily been quite in that space. And so I'm really pleased that we've stuck to our guns and that this isn't a plan, this is a framework, because it is around the cultural change that we're embedding. So I think that's really, really welcome. I'm going to bring in Councillor Ferguson.
So I reported this, I presented this report at scrutiny despite having read it moments before the meeting, and it was quite a hard session. And I like Councillor Davenport. I do appreciate the comments of scrutiny, and I think that ONS group is actually one of the best panels in the council, because they always give constructive feedback. But I was a bit disappointed, and this whole view that we should have been presenting a transformation strategy, I think somewhat overestimates, this is me being brutally honest, the influence that councillors have in administration. Because I've been a portfolio holder for the entirety of this administration, and I have regular calls with all my service leads and with John Taylor. And I can honestly say that all of the good ideas that I've taken credit for and have come up through me have come from the service managers. We get these service plans which are long, and you read through them, and every single time, I meet with Michelle Greet and Katie Kelly, John Collin, I am inspired by the fact that they're the ones that understand their service ideas, not me. And I can't think of a single thing, that I've been to them and said, "Oh, this is a good idea. Why don't we change that?" Now they come to me with their ideas, and I might on occasion say I don't agree with that idea, or maybe that's not a good thing to do politically. But generally, the service improvements, innovation, comes up through the services, and it's our job to support them and inspire them and give them the resources they need to deliver those things. And so what I think is really, really good about this piece of work, and I know how much hard work you've put into it and how much you agonized about what transformation actually means, is actually this is a framework in which we can, because as a portfolio lead, I never get a chance to talk about all the stuff I talk about with my service leads. I never get a chance to talk about what's in the service plan, but here's a framework we can say that this is all the good stuff that's coming up through the council. And so, when I read it, I was inspired by it. And I think that for as a politician, but also in the real world of the commercial work, I think that's where innovation comes from. It comes from everybody. And so I'm really delighted by this. I'm proud to support it. And I think you've done an excellent job. And I'm very proud to be, take lots of credit in this organisation from the hard work of lots of brilliant people.
I'm hoping that John's ears are burning, because I can see him from where I'm sitting. He's not on camera, but credit to our staff, because it comes from our staff. Councillor Davenport-Ray.
Councillor Ferguson is correct that we've thought long and hard about what does that word transformation mean. In fact, a couple of months ago, we thought maybe that isn't the word that means what we think it is. So I think it's important to remember that this document, this framework, is what transformation means for our council. Not everyone has the same definition of it, but we now have a document in place which shows literally program by program, project by project, this is what we mean by how we're transforming. And although you've said many kind things, I'm not going to take any of the credit for this document. In fact, I think it's quite amazing that the transformation team who've been working on this, it's a team that's been stood up over the last 9 months. So they've just learned at speed, and I've been so impressed by their work. And I think this document is really a testament to them.
Here. Anybody else want to come in with any comments? In which case, I think we're all slightly blown away by it. We've had a fantastic evening of sort of some amazing reporting on things we've been doing. This is a really nice way to end Cabinet tonight, because Cabinet, you're being asked to approve this approach to transformation. Councillor Davenport-Ray, would you like to propose this? Councillor Ferguson, would you like to second it, seeing as you've helped co-present it previously? Can I have a show of those who are happy to endorse it? Again, it's unanimous. What a lovely thing to end this evening on. And long may it continue, that it comes from our staff, and that they are leading the way and challenging and helping us think every day. And every conversation I have, I'm going to embarrass our chief exec now, but every conversation I have with Michelle is always around things that we could innovate and things we could do better and things which are opportunities. And long may that continue, where the political side and the officer cohort work together, but where it's the officer cohort that own the transformation, because it is their work, it is their expertise. And my goodness, if you let them loose, look at the amazing stuff that they can do for us. So thank you very much to everybody. On that note, I'm going to call us to an end. Thank you very much for joining us this evening, and at 8:15, good night to everybody.